Boarding. The first thing requisite, the book being forwarded as previously described, is to trim the foot and foredge pretty even with the shears. Footnote. This is now generally done by what is termed the trimming knife, which affords greater expedition and gives the books a neater appearance. End footnote. The back must then be slightly rounded by gently tapping the edges of the back with the hammer, after which the back is to be slightly moistened, which renders the glue rather more pliable for the next process, which is that of backing. This is done by placing a thin bevel-edged board on each side of the book, far enough from the edges of the back to allow the ledge to project for the board, putting them nearer the back of smaller than of larger books. For the boards of the one being thinner than the other, the ledge, of course, should be in proportion. In arranging these backing boards, care must be taken to place them straight with the back, and at the same distance on the one side as on the other. The two boards must now be grasped firmly with the thumb and fingers of the left hand, and the book lowered into the press, taking care that both boards be equally pressed, and that they be not in the slightest degree allowed to shift. The back is then to be gently hammered up and down on both sides, which produces a ledge for the boards. It will then be necessary to observe that the back be perfectly smooth, for any roughness or knotty substance will show through the paper. The book is now ready for putting on the boards. The sides intended to fall in the grooves produced by backing must now be cut with the squaring shears, or ploughed square, and with the bodkin 2 holes pricked in them for each band, the one directly opposite the band itself, and the other about an inch from it. The holes intended for the bands should be near 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the board, and the others about 1/2 an inch. The strings are now drawn through the outer side of the boards, and pass through the other hole to the outer side again, when the ends are spread, and a little paste rubbed on them. The board is then rested on the press cheek, or a stone placed upon the press, and the book, with one board closed, held with the left hand, while with the right the strings are hammered flat on the knocking-down iron. This board is next closed, and the strings are flattened on the other cover. The boards are then squared with the press shears, leaving rather more projection on their foredge than at the head and foot. It is now necessary to prepare for what is termed covering. The dimensions of the open book are taken in length and breadth, and about 1/2 an inch should be allowed for turning in all round. On the center of this, another piece of paper must be pasted, termed the lining, in order to strengthen the back, and which should be cut wide enough to extend on the covers about 2 inches. The whole is now pasted and very lightly folded over. The paste brush is next rubbed once or twice up and down the back of the book, after which the paper is unfolded and the book laid on the 1/2, the foredge being towards the individual. Whilst the other half is carefully pulled over the back, and the cover lying uppermost. The covers must now be properly adjusted. That is, they must have as much projection at the head as at the foot, and vice versa. They should also be pulled a little forward, to prevent their what is termed riding on the back. If this be not done, the book will never open freely. The entire covering is now smoothed with the hands, after which the sides are turned down, and then the heads, the portion falling on the back being turned in as follows. The foredge of the book is placed in a slanting position on the edge of the workboard, while 3 fingers of each hand and the thumbs spread out the covers, the 4 fingers being employed in turning in the ends, which should fall exactly even with the cover. While this is being done, the individual must press himself gently against the bottom of the book to prevent it slipping down. The book being again laid on its side, the foredge and end papers, before turned down, are now raised up again at the corners, and with the thumbnails worked one against the other. The portion thus raised up is cut off with a pair of scissors, and the foredge part folded over the head and foot ends. The join produced by this fold should fall, as near as possible, in a straight direction from the corner of the cover to that of the book when shut. The outer flyleaf at each end is now cut in the shape of a half diamond and pasted down to the cover, and upon this the next is pasted, and rubbed smooth with the hands. This being done, the thumbnail, or the folding stick, should be rubbed round the edges of the covers, to smoothen them. Tin plates, or pieces of glazed board, as large or larger than the book itself, are now placed on the leaves pasted down, and on the outer sides of the cover. These latter must be put exactly even with the covers towards the back, and just as far must the book be now lowered in the press, and screwed tight, after which it should be immediately taken out again. The label should now be pasted on the back, when the book may be considered as finished. Footnote: if a pressing board be placed on each side, and even with the cover, it is of no consequence if it be lowered beyond the level of the back, as the cover grooves, in this case, cannot be affected by the cheeks of the press. By carefully attending to this, particularly in bound books, the edges of the back will be found to project a little beyond the level of the covers, which is always the case with well-bound books. End footnote. Before leaving this subject, it may not be out of place to observe that some boarded books have a paper on the backs of a different color from that on the sides. This sometimes depends on the fancy of the binder, and sometimes on the individual employing him. When books are thus covered, the strip should be put on before the side papers, previous to which it must be lined, and should extend about an inch on the covers of 12s, but still farther as the books increase in size. The strip should be put on first, the covers adjusted, and the ends turned in. The side papers should fall on this about half an inch, and the whole must be proceeded with as above described. Some boarded books, instead of a different coloured strip of paper, have their backs strengthened by a piece of fine canvas, which must be put on precisely as the paper above mentioned. There is another method of boarding greatly superior. The backs, instead of being sewn on bands, are sewn on strips of parchment, and the whole book is covered with canvas. But it so nearly approaches vellum binding that a reference to that process will be sufficient.